This farmer wanted to have a child, but his wife was unable to, until one day.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
This story took place in a small town near Kazan in the Russian southwest in the 1900s. A farmer named Viktor Kuznetsov was busy taking care of his sheep in his farmland. Ever since he was a teenager, Viktor dedicated himself entirely to his work. During the summer, he worked in the fields, and in the winter, with the help of his wife, he did all sorts of handiwork, including making clothes. He was very skilled and took great care of his animals. In fact, his charge more than appreciated him and listened to him dutifully. The couple lived a good life, but something was still missing. Had it not been for this, their life would be perfect. You see, Viktor met his wife while he was still in his youth. They got married in the throes of love and soon tried to have children, but unfortunately, no matter how much they tried, children didn't arrive. A year and then 2 years passed, but they still couldn't become parents, so they went to a local doctor. Keep in mind that in those days, there were none of the modern-day breakthroughs that we have in fertility treatments. Even if they did exist, the couple didn't have the financial means to obtain them. The doctor examined Viktor's wife, and the young couple soon received their answer. "Your wife is infertile and can't have children," he told them. "I'm really sorry to say, but I can't do anything." Viktor just blankly stared at his wife. It was shocking news, but before he processed it, he just helped his wife get through the grief, sadness, and guilt that she couldn't bear children. She told him that it was better to just leave her, that Viktor had the right to his own happiness. But he answered, "No, woman, you are my happiness. It's all part of God's plan, the way He does things." Since then, the both of them lived in an incomplete, broken dream. Perhaps this is why Viktor lived in such harmony with his animals. He tried to soothe his soul and they helped gather his thoughts. His daily life went on as usual. Viktor was shearing all his sheep in the late spring and preparing the wool for sale or to store and make clothes with his wife. He also took care of the young lambs so they could sell in good health later. In the summer, Viktor grew corn and beans, selling at and helping around the city market. He didn't really have time to feel sadness. At the time, he had to work hard if he wanted to live comfortably. When he turned 30, something big happened. The coldest winter of the entire decade hit. It was early spring 1928. All the house windows were locked closed, and the hearth had to be kept lit at all times at the expense of precious firewood. Even the dog, who loved spending the night in the yard, stayed inside. The only thing to do was hide in the house at night, lying beside the fireplace and sleeping in the mornings. Viktor woke up as usual, and while breakfast was at the table, he and his wife discussed the chores for the day. He started preparing some cakes from stored grains to sell from home. The farmer went to feed his animals. A lot of snow had fallen that night, and only by late morning did it finally start clearing. Viktor went down to the yard and felt that something was wrong. He started worrying. Maybe his sheep had escaped, but no, they were all in their places. He sighed with relief and he gave them their feed and watched the sheep happily trot over to eat. And at that moment, he froze. There was a sheep missing. In fact, it was his most loyal sheep, the one that always ran up to him in the mornings to greet him. It was different from the rest of the herd, and what's more, it was the youngest and a runt. Viktor was lost. He'd never lost a sheep before. That was the first time any of his animals had escaped, but how? He wondered if it couldn't see well or couldn't run well, as it was a runt and he just hadn't noticed. So he went out to look for it. He searched every nook and cranny of his land but found nothing. He went up the path he led his sheep down when they were brought to graze on the mountain. Already cold, he walked deeper and deeper and finally found some hoof prints. It was hard to see in contrast with a heavy snowfall, but he found the sheep. A long way from home, the farmer ran up to it. "How did you get here? Did you freeze?" He ran towards his beloved sheep and started shoveling the snow away with his bare hands. The sheep was alive but didn't move. As he shoveled away more and more snow, he finally realized why. Under the sheep's fur, it was shielding a small child. Of course, the sheep were keeping their own young warm all the time. The farmer immediately took the little girl in his hands, and as she felt his touch, she slowly woke up. Her skin was surprisingly warm, as if she just hadn't spent at least several hours, maybe even the night, in the extreme cold. Maybe even as low as -20 degrees Celsius. Viktor couldn't believe his eyes. He took the little girl home and leaving the sheep behind, wondering how the sheep found her. His wife was busy kneading dough in the house as Viktor opened the door and came in with a child in his arms. His wife was shocked and asked him who the girl was, and as Viktor started stammering through an explanation, she just told him to sit still. His wife looked at the child, making sure she was all right. First of all, the couple lived in a very remote place where there were just a few houses, and those houses just had old retirees in them. Victor asked around the neighbors, but no one could tell him anything. After a few hours, he didn't have anyone left to ask, so he went to where he found the little girl. When he got there, somehow the little runt sheep was still there and ran towards him. It was amazing that it spent the night unsheltered and didn't freeze to death. "You're so strong," Victor said. "My own miracle sheep." Victor then searched around to see if he could find any clues or footprints, but nothing came up. Everything was covered in deep snow. For some reason, his gut told him to dig down where he found the girl in the first place. He did so and was surprised to feel something with his hands. There was a paper note there. He unburied it and found some notes scrawled on it. As an illiterate farmer, however, Victor couldn't read it. Heading back home, he was welcomed by the sight of the little girl playing with a dog, and she seemed so happy. The man showed the note to his wife, and they took it to their local wise woman, who read their note to them. The note read, "Forgive me, but I can't take you with me." Everything began to take shape. No doubt whomever passed through left the girl there deliberately. The woman was baffled. How could they leave such a fragile little girl in an unknown place in the bitter cold with just an apology? Victor spent the day searching through the village trying to find the perpetrator, but it seemed like they were long gone and the girl was left behind. When he finally came home at the end of the day, his wife greeted him with a little girl cradled in her arms. As soon as he saw the sight, Victor was brought to tears. That was what he dreamed of for most of his life, a family with his beautiful wife. They tucked the girl into bed and had a conversation at the table about what to do. Although there wasn't much to discuss, both of them had wanted a child so much and it seemed like God had heard their prayers. So they kept her, calling her Katrina, and worked hard to keep her healthy and let her live a good life. Katrina didn't know about how her parents found her. They were just mom and dad. They were all together and lived a happy life. Katrina had also befriended the sheep that Victor found protecting her all those years ago, and they became close. Years passed and the sheep grew, then grew older. The whole family worried about their favorite sheep, but unfortunately her time came and she passed away. Katrina was so sad about the sheep's death that she ran away from home, sitting under a tree in the village and crying. The old wise woman, now long retired, saw the girl crying and asked her if her parents told her that she was adopted, saying, "You shouldn't be sad, don't cry. The important thing is that they love you." Katrina stopped crying and was just confused. The old woman realized her mistake and left the girl alone, but it was already too late. The girl ran home and asked her parents if it was true. Victor, knowing this day would eventually come, opened a box, taking out the original note, and told her the story of how he found her. As she read it, Katrina couldn't help but cry. She said she needed time to think, and the family spent a tense, uneasy night. In the morning, as the couple awoke, their daughter Katrina came into their room. She simply told them, "You're my only parents. I don't need or have anyone else. I love you." Years later, the girl grew into a fine woman and told her own story. There's no doubt that Katrina is grateful to the wonderful parents that fate had given her. She also said that in the end, she decided not to search further into the case. Her parents had registered her as their own daughter, naming her and giving her their last name. Life had without a doubt rewarded Victor and his wife with a beautiful daughter who supported them and took care of them long into their old age.